trends are very good for U.S. businesses in India. And I think we have an opportunity for more trade liberalization now and more economic activity. And let's do what we can to get these facts out.
I hope you enjoy your time in Southern California. As the Bhagavad Gita states, let us think in future for the future. Jai Hind.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ed Royce.
Thank you, Ravi. Thank you, Ravi, very much. Ladies and gentlemen, namaste. It's good to be with everyone here, and congratulations on bringing together so many professionals from all around the world. I know there are Indo-Americans in 35 countries that are engaged in this organization, and I congratulate you for bringing people together for this dialogue, and also in a way to celebrate. By the way, belated late happy Diwali, but we did get the Diwali stamp through the Congress, and so Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard and I are very proud of that. And I was at the Baptist Temple in Chino Hills to celebrate. But while I was there, I was talking to G.J. Zala and specifically speaking about an experience I had had some 16 years before. And as many of you know, I've gone to India many, many times over the years. I've been in the Congress for 24 years. And when I joined the India caucus, we had 8 members. We built it up to 160. But we were talking about the fact that back then, back years ago, there weren't the same attitudes. There wasn't the same openness. We'd come out of the, last stages of the Cold War, I guess you'd call it. And so we had to get the members of the House and Senate to focus on a relationship based on our common values. Now, as I explained the argument, Indian culture was 5,000 years old. It was committed to striving to find peace. And maybe India didn't always achieve its goals of political pluralism, of tolerance, but neither did we. But at least we were headed in the same direction. At least we shared those same values. And it seemed to me that the important relationship would be one based on those values, based on strengthening the ties with India, the two great democracies. And so I had worked with President Clinton, traveled with him on his historic trip to India. I had briefed President Bush. I've been asked to brief him when he was a candidate about India and the importance of our building that relationship as a cornerstone. But 16 years ago, after I'd made a number of trips, I was asked to go at the point where that earthquake had leveled Bhuj. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Because on that trip with USAID, when we landed, I had never seen such devastation as I saw in Gujarat. And in the middle of all of that, and I saw BAPS again on the ground doing good work, but there was one individual bringing order out of the chaos, and that was the Chief Minister, Modi, of Gujarat State. And that's the first time I'd ever met him in my trips to India. And I had an opportunity to observe his efforts at directing the crisis firsthand. And I remember thinking to myself and saying to a colleague, I would not be surprised if that individual someday is head of state. Now, over the years, I have continued to try to stay engaged, going to India during the elections, being involved in, I was there for the International Fleet Review. Many of you knew I carried the original legislation to lift sanctions on India. I'd argued at the time, the sanctions should have been on Beijing. Beijing transferred the ring magnets to Pakistan to give Pakistan the capability to make the atomic weapon. Why put the sanctions on India? I carried the legislation on the House floor for the Civilian Nuclear Framework Agreement, and we had a hard time getting it through the House. I had a harder time getting it through the Parliament. I went over to India. That vote was about by the same margin, I think by about a 4-vote margin in India. But all of these steps were important because over time we were able, both in India and here, to change the perception of India. But I think the thing that has changed the perception the most is the contributions made by Indo-Americans here in the United States. The contributions made by professionals, and I can tell you whether it's the IT sector, and my wife worked for the old Bell Labs, Alcatel-Lucent, so she knows more people from Hyderabad and Bangalore than I do. Or whether it was in the hospitality industry. And as some of you know, she was a vice president for Choice Hotels and for Marriott. So yes, she certainly knows more Patels than I do. or whether it's in the physician community, where from Dr. Sanjay Gupta on CNN to any hospital, to any major surgery, you see that contribution. Or whether here in California, where you see the startups because of that entrepreneurial spirit. But perhaps most importantly of all, your sons and daughters who have the highest degree of the highest percentage of advanced degrees of anyone in the United States. All of that changes perceptions. I would just give an example. I'm just thinking about some of the impact on our thinking that Indo-Americans have had in the United States. And I think about one who I'm particularly close to because my wife and I helped her, but Nikki Haley, the governor of South Carolina. The ability in the epicenter of the Old South to retire permanently that Confederate flag and move the focus to the American flag. And the way she did it, the way she brought people together to do it, I just think the contributions in every level. Bobby Jindal is another Indo-American governor that I know, from Louisiana. And I knew him in the House. I served with him for a while. And Tulsi Gabbard, I'm going to mention as well. And we're glad she's here with us. And so when we talk about this contribution from those who share the viewpoint of you in the room, I think we also recognize the profound observation, as Ravi told you, of that First Amendment to our Constitution, the concept of freedom of religion, and also separation of church and state. But that concept of freedom of speech and freedom of religion as sort of the foundation, the First Amendment, and to know in India as well, that's the goal. Our goal is to keep heading in that direction of protection of that concept. At the same time, I've had an opportunity to recognize that we can't miss an important moment. And that moment is working with India to realize the full potential of this relationship. I had the opportunity when Prime Minister Modi, I had offered an invitation, and as you know, there was something of a discussion of whether I could do that as chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, because the administration at the time was a little resistant when he was a candidate, but I had offered him I'd made an offer for him to come here to the United States as chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee. And subsequently had that opportunity to travel again and meet him, and I will share with you what he said after his election. In every sector of India's forward march, I see the U.S. as an indispensable partner. Let us work together to convert shared ideals into practical cooperation. I had an opportunity to have dinner with him in New York when he was here in New York, and to be with him also in San Jose, and also after he made his speech to the House of Representatives, which I had worked on the Speaker to get the Speaker to agree to do that. The Foreign Affairs Committee held a private reception afterwards. And I see an opportunity here for us to accelerate this partnership. And I see in the reforms that are being pushed that we have a real chance to realize these achievements that many of us hope for, because it's important that we strengthen the U.S. and India. Both countries are based on the rule of law. Both have these shared values. India is in a tough neighborhood. And there's much that the United States, I think, can gain out of this. I think the government's taken impressive steps to boost growth. You know the types of economic reforms that are intended to make one market across India instead of a balkanized system of separate markets, to increase trade and investment. We've seen the government announce its foreign trade policy to double India's exports of goods and services to $900 billion by 2020. Already 500 U.S. companies have opened offices or made investments in India. We've increased our trade by 60%. We've seen exports to India rise 35%. And of course, this investment goes both ways. Over 200 Indian companies now have operations in the U.S. They invest more than $15 billion. They support 90,000 jobs. They're major partners in every startup that we have in the state of California. So the reforms put in place by the government in India have helped us realize this impressive growth, and will help India meet the needs and aspirations of a population that's going to increase, but it will be the world's largest in 2025. So we're helping to integrate India more into globalized goods, services, investment markets. You're the bridge in this room to help this happen. And this is going to significantly boost job growth here and in India. It's going to ensure already competitive Indian companies become even more competitive. It's going to strengthen our bilateral trade and investment relationship, and that's going to be an important part of development here, development there. So we're now India's largest trading partner. It was not always so. We are committed to raising our bilateral trade another fivefold to $500 billion, as you've heard. And we're working to make this a reality. So it is indeed a pleasure to be here. And I will share with you, after these many years of working on so many projects related to the Indo-American relationship, whether it's counterterrorism, or going to the International Fleet Review to represent the United States, or to try to push more trade and investment, or to travel with the President to India, President Clinton. I have this commitment as Chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee. I will continue to work to strengthen this relationship, but I also recognize the importance of all of the professionals in this room, because you have done an enormous amount to help achieve exactly this goal. Thank you so much.